All right, Carylyne, thanks for hopping on the podcast today. Just to give everybody a quick introduction of who you are, we first met you through the Category Design Academy. You were a member of our first cohort who absolutely rocked it, by the way. I think one of your early wins was you said you paid back the ROI on the academy in like your first couple of months, and you started your own advising company. We recently just heard that you've convinced a lot of your friends to quit their jobs and do their own thing. So we're super excited to talk to you today and dig into just your story and also how you've convinced other people to do this and what you've seen work well and what you've seen maybe not work well, both from a tactical, practical side of things of what do you need before you jump, but also I think from an emotional and psychological side of things, right? Like who are the kind of people who can take the leap? What works well? What kind of emotions do they go through? How do you navigate all this stuff? So super excited to talk to you. And just to give everybody a quick idea of who you are an advisor and an angel investor to early stage startups and teams and everybody who is creating their own category. You're a partner at Block Space Force, where you help scale block space focused companies. And you also are kind of building two new brands or two new categories, a tea brand called Portman Tea and a sun care brand called Good Instincts. You've been a CEO, you've gone through some acquisitions and IPOs. So we can dig into all of that, but basically you're awesome and we're excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to dig into everything.
So maybe let's just start with if you can kind of go back to that moment when you started doing your own thing, right? And maybe this was super early on for you. Maybe you've always been kind of doing your own thing, but take us a little bit of like, you obviously have worked for a lot of early stage companies and you still do, but what was that leap from like employee to advisor?
I'll just have to say, as an Asian dad of teenagers and young adults, I'm prepared for the emotional damage that Carylyne is going to share about how early she made all this work, but that's a whole different story.
Emotional damage. Okay, I think I'm trying to think like what's the best way to cogently frame it. I guess very quickly, I grew up in Singapore, so I've lived in many different places around the world now, but that's kind of where I grew up. When I was 14, I took my first internship because I was very interested in learning how people do what they do. That first internship was at the National Environment Agency in Singapore. So at that time, I was very excited about talking people's ears off about conservation and water and whatever it is. So I think that was sort of pivotal for me, understanding that getting a job and like learning how to have the skills as well as like the attitude to being a good team player. I think that was sort of where it started. Following that, actually, I just kept on going. I've done lots of other internships, but also started other social enterprises. So I managed to work with a few of my friends to create some businesses around helping. There's an agency for people with more of a mental or personal disabilities. So we managed to find some fun things for them to do and then sort of help them to turn that into profit that then goes back into funding their programs. So I think that was the first one. And then I've also, with the same group of friends, helped to start an orphanage in Malaysia, as well as doing some shoe drops in China as well. So I think that has been always sort of core to me. It's like doing nice things for the people around me, but also to create more impact and more change.
Is at the age of what? How old are you at this?
Like 15 to 18, this period.
And so you're now what I'm trying to understand is the full picture. So you're doing all these entrepreneurial things, so socially good things. 15 to 18. I assume you're still going to school at the same time.
Yes.
And I'll tell you as a story if you tell me this is the stereotype is true. So I went to college at the University of Chicago, and I would always recruit there. And when I was at my old firm, and I recruited there for 18 years or 20 years or so. And at some point, the students would tell me this phenomenon of they would take a class, and when they would show up, they would look for the pack of Singaporeans that were there. And if the Singaporeans were in the class, they would immediately drop the class because they knew that no one was smarter. They would always work harder than you. They would all get the A's. And so they knew that they were all on scholarship. And if they didn't maintain a certain grade, then they would lose a scholarship. And then they had to go back and work for the government and this and that. So there was, yes. That's all true, I assume?
That is all true. But I think the funny thing is also like for Singaporeans, like going to class and seeing like Chinese scholars, then you realize that we're not even that level of like hard work. So there's always someone out
Amazing.
there more
Always
hardworking.
someone out there.
Asian
But
intellectual hierarchy is coming
I
into
know.
play here.
so wait, I'm trying to understand. So school does not sound like an American high school experience. So it's probably very time consuming and you're doing all of this. I'm tempted to believe that you had a group of friends that you just enjoyed hanging out with. So that was part of the fun. But why were you doing all of this? Is it truly just interest or something else was going on? Or
I think you're like, that's a really sharp question, Eddie, because I think around that time, actually, I was going through quite a lot of upheaval in my life. So my parents were going through sort of like a turbulent relationship. I guess in like sort of short terms, my father was a psychopath. So he tried to basically murder my mom and I when we were in the house. There was a lot of sort of just emotional turbulence at that time. I could sort of think of it as maybe this is an escape, but actually I was also having a lot of fun. It's just more of adjusting to what life was like, and then sort of having control and autonomy over things that I could do that gave me joy. There's definitely a big element of that. And then secondarily, it's learning to be independent and just valuing the possibility of just doing things my way, and understanding the value of financial security and freedom, and being able to like pursue these things, and knowing that I can do what it takes to survive. Sort of around when I was like 15, 16, my mom and I left the house because it started being pretty difficult to stay there without physical worry about what could happen. So one of these days, I was just telling my mom, we need to leave or we might just not survive this.
oh my
I think
goodness, yeah.
there's definitely that. At the same time, because I actually had a pretty really good relationship with the principal at my school. So many times I would skip classes that I was not interested in, and I would just hang out with the two principals in their office, and they would counsel me or like talk to me. We would discuss like poetry or whatever it is that was interesting for me. I definitely owe a lot of that interest and that outlet to them. And at the same time, they also discovered that I could write speeches and could present. So basically, I was helping them to write a bunch of speeches that they were going to give to the school or to guests. That's kind of where I also got started learning about how to communicate better and how to speak better and things like that. So all super formative. And yeah, I'm very grateful to all of the people who have really helped me in that period and helped me to grow and push me to say, this is not just your life. There's a lot that you could do. And if you have the perseverance and you have the talent, you should pursue it. That really helped me and shaped the way that I thought, which was, I was an underdog. I had a lot of baggage, perhaps like emotionally, but I know that I'll be able to get out of that. All of those things that I was doing, all of the people that were really helpful, and that's sort of shaped my core sort of character. When I think about who I would like to hang out with, or like who I would like to talk to, and all of that, I think it's a lot of that loving to help the people that are more underdogs or bootstrapped, and like taking that to the world stage and helping those smaller teams to become really well known in their own category, and seeing these lean teams that maybe are more undiscovered and helping to really push that forward. So I think that's,
It's amazing.
yeah, sort of where that came from.
Well, I'm kind of swimming with so many thoughts and reactions. I mean, number one, I'm so sorry for you and your mom having gone through all of that. I hope it's in a better place. One of the core things that's kind of leaping out to me, Carylyne, is one of the reasons why people want to make the leap to creator capitalist is more control and agency in their life. And normally it's like, I just want control over my work, but you want to control over the entirety of your life and your physical safety. And
Yes.
that's a whole different and higher level of control than I think most people think about. And so I think the power of, I think Christopher says, if it's meant to be, it's up to me type of a thing, you really embrace that.
Definitely.
The other thought that I had is I want to make a shout out to our fellow pirate, Danny Bauer, who on the education side of a principal who's a ruckus maker. Like I'll be honest, I've never heard of, I mean, maybe this occurs in other places, but like, it's hard for me to imagine like a Korean or a Japanese or a Chinese principal, like, yeah, skip class and hang out with me and, this and that. So there's something different about your principals. I'm guessing that's not the norm in Singapore either,
It's
but
not the norm at all.
yeah.
Not
So
at
you
all.
had something special there.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned, I mean, obviously your friend group. I assume they knew what was going on in your life, and they kind of embraced this as not only is it fun, but what a great way to be a friend to Carylyne and do something amazing. And so kudos to serendipity plays such an important role, but it's remarkable in that in the worst of times and the worst of situations, something good can emerge still from it. And becoming your own creator, an entrepreneur is as Christopher says, it's a way out, not just a way up type of a thing.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I'm also very grateful for the opportunity to keep learning and relearning things, like even now getting into startups in my late teens. So definitely thanks to my friends who were very excited about it as well. And then ever since I did my first sort of startup internship, it's just never really gone back to a regular job. And then I always joke with people that I'm fun employed. So it's just like quite difficult.
I was fun employed for Halloween one year.
Yeah.
I like dressed up as a resume.
Yes. Oh, that's
funny.
amazing.
Yeah. So like what I'm also hearing from you, Carylyne, is when you were, call it, your teenage years, you kind of just got really interested in business, and you were doing these internships. You were seeing both like how you could help people and make a big impact, but also grow revenue and bring in money for the business and build these things from scratch. And a lot of it is your personal effort, right? The more you put in, oftentimes the more you get out of, especially with a startup, right? You don't feel like you're just another person pushing a button. You're actually making an impact. And it sounds like that's kind of why you decided to not even go into a more corporate role. You were just like, I immediately want to start working with startups. Did you kind of start your own thing? Were you working for a startup company? What did that look like?
From the 18 to 20 something period, I was also hanging out with other friends in college now, also interested in entrepreneurship. Around that time, we did hackathons. We joined a bunch of different events for just to learn about what's out there. And so I was also fortunate to hang out with two of my good friends. And then we decided to create a company together. And so we started working on and this is very early, like this is before AI was hot. So we did AI chat summarization before it was a thing. 2014, 2015, this was like 10 years ago while we were in college. And then as we were graduating, we got an invitation to join an accelerator in Hawaii. Just decided to pack our bags and go. And that's how we ended up in Oahu, in Honolulu. Also very, very grateful for the opportunities. Basically, we went there, and then I think I told Eddie this the last time. It's like we always work till like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. Cab driver would always ask like, "Where's the party?" And then we would say we were just working. And said, "You guys must be like the only people working on this island."
That's
So
100% true.
That's kind of how I started more sort of like a formal startup journey. So we started there and then moved to continue to grow the business in SF and in New York. Managed to meet lots of people there. Later on, we also exited that to one of the conglomerates in Asia. After that, because I had been reading so many AI papers, someone told me like, hey, if you can read AI papers, can definitely read blockchain papers. So I started to read blockchain papers and got really interested in the tech. I genuinely say that as I was first interested in the tech and not like the other stuff, and started to help to scale and internationalize many of the teams that were building more of the interesting category defining stuff in the space. That was where I got more into just not only AI but other fields. And then kept going with that for a few years and then exited that in 2020. And with that little bit of time, I was thinking of pursuing personal interests. So I wrote a patent for a sunscreen applicator and was also thinking of other stuff that, sort of like inventing fun stuff on the fly. That's sort of a genesis of those two fun consumer facing businesses. And then I think now with Blockspace Force, mostly focus on helping to scale out Bitcoin focused like Blockspace startups, making products that are actually innovative as well as driving more utility on the blockchain itself. So yeah, being in and out of multiple startups, starting things, like trying new things, creating things. For me, a big part of it is just having that autonomy, that sort of mastery, the feeling of growth. Even though I've done this lots of times, even today or tomorrow, I know for sure there will be something that comes up that I'm like, I've never seen this before. I never encountered it. How do I learn to do it better? Or how do I learn to adapt to the situation? So I think that's been the most fun for me in terms of being able to do my own thing.
So you have in a 6-year period, probably what most people would dream to accomplish in 60 years in a career. So let's go back and unpack some of this. I'm trying to understand. So making the leap makes sense. You did an internship. and you got hooked on just kind of entrepreneurship and business. And that's kind of funny to me that at the age of 14 was your last 9 to 5, but that's kind of neither here nor there. And then it's kind of fascinating, the startup and entrepreneurial activity that you've done. One, it's pretty diverse. So clearly some technology things, some physical things, some socially good things, just some probably for-profit things. You've kind of hit all the areas of the spectrum. But then in high school and in college, you're kind of doing both, being a good Asian, child and doing both and all that. But at what point did you figure out what your superpower was? I'm trying to get a feel for, are you the technical inventor, creator person? Are you the CEO, strategist, visionary person? Or are you the sales? Your answer is probably like all of the above, but I'm trying to get a feel for, there must have been a point in time that somebody said to you, you know what, Carylyne's superpower is this. There are many other things, but she's uniquely powerful at this. Tell us about when you discovered that and what it was and how you got there.
I feel like, especially having gone through the academy, the answer to that is extremely winding and complex in real life. It's definitely helpful to have the framework to figure that out. But before I even got to the pirate content and had those tools, I think it's just sort of trial and error, trying everything. So early days of a startup, you have to do all the research, you have to look into the tech, you have to talk to everyone, you have to do all the ops, all the marketing, all of the whatever. The basic ability to learn stuff quickly, I think that's sort of underpins all of the really good entrepreneurs that I know. It still took me a long time to know what I was good at, and all along it's always been like imposter syndrome, right? I don't know what I'm good at. Maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I'm not as good as I think. Maybe it's Dunning-Kruger, whatever. So I think lots of points were a lot of doubt. The first sort of formal startup that I did, I was thought I was more of an operational person or more of a get things done kind of person, but I
This is
realized
the
that
one in Hawaii?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And
And
you
then
were doing AI summaries in Hawaii? Is that what you guys were doing?
yes. Yes. So I always thought maybe I'm an operational person, but at the same time, obviously I was doing a lot of the marketing stuff, a lot of the even design and stuff like that, right? So I think when you are too much of a generalist, it's very hard to pinpoint. But later on, as we were going through acquisition and stuff, it was trying to define our roles and understanding that actually a lot of the core skills are things like leadership or communication or whatever. That's just table stakes. But then what's your superpower on top of that? I think that actually took me many more years to figure out after that point. Now, probably the best thing that I'm figuring that I'm good at doing is things like synthesis, orchestration. So pulling the right things together, sort of applying that intuition from experience. And then I think the other part of that is actually figuring out what's the right narrative or the right angle to be approaching something. And then executing with the team to get that narrative actually into market and actually showing results. The most recent conversation I had with someone on my team was he said, I think the main thing that you're really good at is helping a team to navigate in very rapid and turbulent waters. So basically, everything is crazy and nobody knows what they're doing. You are the right person to go to say, okay, this is the path forward and this is how we're going to do it. And this is the plan for us to do it. This is sort of the clearest that I have been since I don't know, years since I started.
It's incredible. I'm going to play back what you shared. I think there's an aspect of EQ and IQ. I'm going to say calm in the crazy, which obviously your upbringing had a huge part of there's aspects that, I not to the degree that you had, but I can relate to as a child of immigrants, having to be an adult way earlier than you're supposed to be in the right? So there's certainly that. But the ability to be calm in the crazy is extraordinarily, and you can't really learn that. You have to live that, right? So there's that. I think the rapid synthesis is a really interesting one, not only with your startup success, but with your advisory work. That's kind of a core skill of any consultant or advisor, is the ability to learn something really quickly and come to a narrative, as you said. It's kind of fascinating, Carylyne, is that I actually wonder, of all the amazing things that you've done early on in your life and throughout your life, the speech writing for your principals is the one that kind of stood out to me. That's a really particular skill, right? It's one thing to learn stuff and it's another thing to be able to communicate it. And it's a wholly different thing to communicate it for somebody else in a different context. So that's a remarkable skill that they recognized in you. Ironically, being kind of a speech writer is kind of in the background, being a ghostwriter type of thing. But in many respects, our old pirate Cole will talk about, ghostwriting is a great way to learn and get paid for it. And my suspicion is that the calm and the crazy, the rapid synthesis and learning, and then so it's probably an amalgam of those two, plus the ability to curate a crisp narrative that we're going to go to do this in the crazy. I've read everything, and the ability to execute is a wholly different skill set. You probably have multiple superpowers. Is what I'm hearing, each of which have been built through different phases of your life, but they're really things that you call, I mean, the calm and the crazy you had to learn and with your family situation, but then again you've continued to inject yourself in work craziness, and so you build that callus and skill set over time. But the rapid synthesis, it has been a hallmark of, it's hard, it's just really hard for me to fathom, like, you doing Singaporean high school and college and doing all these things.
Eddie's mind is blown over here. He's gonna go have he's gonna have a conversation with his kids after this. I think that's awesome, Carylyne, though. And I think part of what was interesting for me is I feel like a lot of people, it's a multiple year or decade long journey to figure out what it is their superpower is, right? And sometimes it is this combination of different things, and you have to test things out, right? Like you were trying all the different roles to be able to figure out what you really enjoy doing, but then also what people are proving that you're good at. And I'm kind of curious what that's looked like for you when we talk about like agency and control and having the freedom and building your life this way, which you said you wanted to do very intentionally. What does that look like now? Once you are kind of able to tap into that and you exited the company, you're doing your own thing. Give us an overview of what you're doing today, what your life looks like, what agency means to you.
I'm thinking about this from the perspective of the most recent reading books about the four capitals. So I've been reading those sort of carefully and trying to figure out what else I could learn or optimize for myself. For me, the base now that I feel like I've hopefully gotten to is the base of the financial capital is good enough for me to pay for my parties, right? For my lifestyle, for my family to be comfortable. And in this, fortunate to be here since I was maybe 29 or so. So learning how to handle my finances in a proper way, investing in real estate, having a house, just really figuring out what are safe, smart, speculative things I need to do for myself. So growing up with that sense of financial instability, sometimes the flip side of that is you don't want to think about money at all. There's sort of abandon it to just make as much as possible so you don't ever have to think about it again. I think it's one good approach, but then like obviously doesn't really work too well. Like in reality, you still have to think carefully about like how you want to invest in things, like how deliberate we can be to handle all of these things. That being the base of like all of the other capitals. I've also been learning rainy day funds, like having no debt, like basically putting it into indexes. For me, I think like being very risk on is important. Everything that I do is chasing upside, even with like startup equity, some of the crypto stuff. Like I invest in a hedge fund, I angel invest in like, I think now I have like 70 plus companies that I've invested in. I feel like a lot of that is understanding what my risk profile is. So that sort of agency of interest in knowing and being fortunate to have the opportunity to play with capital in a way that's intellectually stimulating, like learning how other people run their businesses and stuff, looking at
because your risk profile, I suspect, is on the high side. Is that
very high? I would
very
think.
high?
So.
Yeah. So, and because like, and it explains why you've been able to do everything without financial capital as a safety net for you, right? And which is, I think, the misnomer that as we're finding for a lot of people is, I can't quit until I have financial capital.
Yeah.
Look at Carylyne. Financial capital is you can build while you do your creator capital thing, and you have the runway to do that. And I think it's fascinating just with the amount of your high risk tolerance. The financial capital side meant, let's make sure that the very safe and smart things are taken care of, because you're naturally going to do the speculative things and stuff. So that's really fascinating.
Yeah. And for the other aspects of agency, it's like having the freedom to choose what projects I want to work on, which ones I want to turn away because they're not a fit for me, or they're not really building the sort of category that I'm interested in, or not even trying to build a category, they're just trying to compete or whatever. Usually I just turn those away at the advisory, but also the agency to figure out how I want to spend my time, with whom, doing what. That's been really huge for me. And being able to focus on different things at different times of the day, even I feel like being able to have mastery over my schedule that has been a huge thing for me, like in the past few years. So, and then also like the ability to choose like the sort of intellectually fun things to work on, like which sort of clients I want to work with, or which sort of teams, like um, which sort of vendors I want to pick and things like that. All of those have been a big part of the joy of being able to do my own things.
Can I ask? So number one, it this is great because it makes, I think, Kat and Christopher and I even more like, we better write very carefully, because Carylyne's clearly reading all of it very carefully. That's kind of one. But number two is like, so if financial cap, so you've been discovering your superpowers as you go, right? And but I think this idea of what's kind of fascinating to me is that an EQ superpower can come first, and that calm and the crazy is an amazing superpower that I know lots of people who are very talented who don't have that skill set, and they're old like me or whatever, and they panic. And so, in emotional intelligence can be absolutely the basis of a superpower, plus the rapid synthesis and learning. But financial capital you've been building, and that's kind of the sequence of it is kind of fascinating. Your reputation capital, I think, is also something that consistently has built as you've done startups in high school and college. And then obviously you won funding to come to Hawaii, and then you had an exit. I'm sure they wanted to keep you, and you were like, no, 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 no. But in your relationship capital, you've been very choosy about. But what strikes me is that I suspect your intellectual capital you've been building from the very, very beginning of your career. And that's the one that, the learning helps you build intellectual, writing speeches helps you build that. The ability to consume, I'm still kind of trying to get my head around, like you were doing AI summaries in 2014, the ability to consume technical papers and to spot opportunities, and that's intellectual capital. And then it sounds like there's intellectual capital in highly technical fields, AI and blockchain and crypto and all the execution of that. You've applied it to physical goods, which sunscreen is a way different business model than crypto and all that. But then the last bit of intellectual capital that I'm hearing you create is specifically around the agency. And I don't quite understand how you make time for everything in the day. But it sounds like you've created a system or intellectual capital about how you manage your time. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I have no doubt that your work hours are quite significant and have been for some time. But it sounds like even if the number is high, you've been able to tweak it so that it's all the stuff you want to do, and there's less kind of drama and hee-haw in your life. So explain how you manage your time, and it sounds like you've created something around.
Yeah. I wonder how I get through the day. But the main thing I've been sort of synthesizing from all of the books around how do people manage their time, and looked at other people's system and interviewed a bunch of people, like, how do you do this? How do you get your stuff done? I have this sort of life planner thing that I've put together. It's the system where I have my long-term goal, my medium-term goal, that letters down to like my annual goals, that letters down to my quarterly goals, that letters down to my monthly goals, then my weekly, then my daily. So anytime that I'm just like, what am I doing? I go back to that page and let's go from the top. Why am I doing this? And then go from there. The most impactful thing is the weekly one. Once a week, I sit down, I look at what I need to be doing for the following week, and then I set the top 3 things I absolutely must achieve for that week. And then every single day before I go to bed, I also have the top 3 things I need to do for the next day. So as long as I can get those done, then I can work on the other stuff that comes up, whatever requests that come up and whatever. And I don't think this is super revolutionary or anything. I think a lot of people have talked about it, but the hard part is doing it. So I think like sometimes I still struggle, but I try my best.
Well, I have to say, even if someone else has created it, that you're doing it, and that I would pay an obscene amount of money for you to teach this to my children, but that's a whole different story again.
Yeah, so so now I have like a bunch of templates that I have gathered from like different things I've done throughout my life. So I have like a bunch of templates from when I was learning to onboard people, when I was learning to skill certain things, how to run an all hands meeting, like all of that. So I actually collated a bunch of this in like a Notion table, like Notion page, and I've been sharing it with like other friends entrepreneur friends who need certain things, I'll be like, oh, actually I have a template for this and I have a template for that. That is helpful. And then that life planner thing, I shared it with one of my colleagues. And then a few weeks after that, he came to me and he said, this has made me ultra productive. So thank you. I thought that was really interesting. I guess in terms of like creator capital, I feel like I haven't worked on this as much. Admittedly, a lot of my time and effort have been like really spent on running the companies or like basically pushing that stuff forward, but definitely would love to find a system that works, but I just don't know what it is yet.
Well,
No,
it
but
sounds like you have a
yeah.
lot of it. All the templates. I mean, that's intellectual capital gold right there. It's more of just how do you want to share it? Who do you want to share it with? What makes the most sense? What platform do you want to do it? Because you've got a lot of information in that head.
Yeah, I would be excited to keep going and do a lot of the work that I'm sure will come through, like with the new course and everything as well, to flesh out what I could do here.
Well, you know what's fascinating is there's an author pastor in New York. He passed away recently, Tim Keller, and he's put out a ton of books, but only fairly recently. And what I think is, I don't think I've ever heard him explain this, but I suspect it's decades of writing sermons that he never published, and then it's like, well, I have all this content and they're organized by theme, and let me just publish them. It's like, I think like Kat saying, you're doing all the right stuff of creating your intellectual capital that works for you, works for your companies, works for your friends, and then at some point, as you free up time for yourself, I have no doubt that you could publish, create some version of it so that others can benefit from it, but that also you can monetize it in a way that is good for you. But I hope it's aspirational and inspirational for people, is that you're creating IC from other people's stuff, so you don't have to create it from scratch. It doesn't have to be purely original, but it does have to work, and it does have to have I've lived it and it does work. And to me, some rando person's idea is one thing, but if it works for Carylyne and her crazy schedule, it must truly work. That's like, you're adding the proof to the pudding that this is actually legit. That's what's really powerful about it. You consume it, you apply it, and then you share it. That is itself amazing. So
Yeah,
It gives
I'd love
me
to see
hope.
your life planner. I need to plan my
Okay,
life a little bit.
I can share it with you after and let me
Thanks.
know how I can improve it.
I'll let you
no,
know.
it's amazing.
I know we only have a couple minutes left and we don't want to take up too much of your evening, but I am curious to hear about your friends who you've said you've convinced to go and do their own thing. Tell us more about that and what that looked like.
Yeah, there is a lot that goes into it. And for all of the three of them that I recently convinced, so one of them used to be a design lead, UX design lead. One of them was a marketer. And then the third person was actually a compiler engineer. Very, very different people, very different fields. For many people, you sort of know actually that there's stuff that's out there that you want to do, but you haven't really gone after it yet. So I think that's kind of the start of all of this, right? It's like you have this feeling that there's something that you should do or want to do out there, but then generally there's a lot of fear around it. And the biggest thing that I've noticed is I've talked about this with all three of them, a scarcity mindset. You think that resources are scarce. If I quit, then I'll never have enough money. I will not have the same amount, can't afford the same lifestyle and things like that. There's definitely a big part of that sort of things are scarce kind of mindset. That's a really, really big part of the fear that I'll never get this sort of lifestyle back again, or people are going to judge me, or I'm going to fail, or whatever it is. Fear is a really big part. For some of them, I've talked to them about this for maybe 3 or 4 years, and then they finally took a leap after all that time. Everyone just needs to do what gets them comfortable enough with the idea that they can do this. Each of them had their own paths. For example, one of them is like, maybe sometimes there's a catalyst of, okay, my manager has changed and I'm like really not happy with that. Let me make a change. Sometimes it's time based. It's like, it's a new year, I'm going to do something different. If there's a hook or like a certain turning point that really helps them, and that's also the point where you can apply persuasion, right? Like, try to make a change. Like, we talked about this, let's do something about it. Helping them to understand the options that are out there and the concept of being an auctioneer for them as well. Everyone tends to undersell themselves. For example, my friend would say, okay, I got this thing, I want to put out a proposal for X dollars. I'm like, you gotta double that or like triple that because that's the value. And here's why I think that's the case. Just having someone that's able to be there telling them that this is what you're worth. You got to go for it and don't let this hold you back. That has been a really, really big part of how I managed to convince them. It's not me, it's really them being there and having that voice. The new course and the new book probably is going to spark that sort of change for many people, just understanding the possibilities that are out there, that they can actually rebuild an even better lifestyle for themselves with that sort of agency, with the sort of autonomy, as well as just being able to have the freedom to choose and do the best work that they can. All of these factors of helping them to understand that, getting over the fear.
That's amazing. Can I ask a specific question? Did any of them start out what they were doing as a side hustle while they were still working, or did they just completely stop and then go and start fresh?
They all completely stopped. I think there were other people that I talked to along the way that probably have done side hustles, but maybe it's the sort of people that I hang out with. We are all pretty binary, just all or like all in or nothing.
Makes sense. And then out of curiosity, did any of it in this, I love the scarcity mindset idea, the bad manager, like people leave people, they don't leave companies. We all know that. And
Yes.
the new year timing thing, all that makes sense. I'm just kind of curious if part of the scarcity mindset was there's lots of jobs out there. I can always go back and get one if I need to. Was there a magic kind of, I'm trying to figure out if it was just the timing, it was the 4 years of prep. And that to me is such an important insight of don't expect somebody to just flip a switch. It's going to take some time. I'm curious if there was, sometimes there's a one simple reframe of there's lots of jobs out there, or there's lots of things that I could do. I'm trying to think through what it was that, I mean, if it were me and I was your friend, I'd be like, can always rely on Carylyne to help me find something in life. But that's the whole different thing.
Yeah, so actually I did hire one of them to help me with stuff. So definitely that helps. There is something there in terms of, I feel this works especially for entrepreneurs, is telling them that the safety net is going back and finding a job. That's not going to be a problem. And my rationale for that is every time you go out and do something on your own, you actually learn way more than you would have done in your job. So you might as well go and do it. The risk is lower than you think. And in fact, the upside is a lot higher than you think. So I feel like it's sort of reframing that as this is an opportunity for you to upskill way more than you would have done, like in the ordinary course of things, sort of telling them how I had learned a lot in my time doing all kinds of random things that also helps them to recognize like what sort of skills or like what sort of opportunities they could get if they just went and pursued that on their own.
That's amazing. I mean, it's the learning as the abundance is such a awesome reframe, and it's something that I don't think I'd ever thought of that way. But you're absolutely right. The learning curve just goes much faster when you take off the floaties. You're going to learn how to swim faster.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think maybe the sort of analogy for this in tech too is like all of these people who work at the big tech companies, they'll come together and start a new company, go out and they get acquired back, and then they get paid like 5 times what they were paid before because they have been acquired back into the company, right? So that's always an option. You think you're not going to get your job back, but maybe you'll get a different level when you come back. You might as well try it.
Amazing.
I think for anyone who is really considering trying to make a switch in their lives, definitely think about the idea that you could create a lot more abundance if you just went for it. I think that's something to vision out for yourself. Think about what that ideal is and then work backwards from there. It's very easy to just keep going with whatever you're doing now, but if you sort of deliberately sketched out the idea of where your life should be, and if you have that sort of feeling that things should change, then you probably know there's something different out there. So like just be as concrete as possible about what you want and then work backwards. For me, that does help. So even though probably in whatever the next 3 to 10 years it's going to look completely different and probably you'll achieve even more than you thought possible, at this point it's important to like at least have a sense of, if I can just go for this big vision, my life would be really different. So excited for everyone to create their own categories and go do things.
Advice from Pirate Carylyne Chan, everybody. And where can people find you? Like, what's the best way for them to find you online or with your business or anything that you're working on?
I think I'm pretty open. My website has a form, like email, LinkedIn, I don't really check, but like anywhere is fine. Super open to talking to all pirates and help in any small way that I can, and definitely to learn from everyone else as well. Like all of us are on a journey.
Yes, we are.
Amen.
Thanks, Carylyne.
Thank you.
Thank you.